What is the most neglectful thing your parent did to you growing up? I had lice from the time I was 8 years old until I was 15. Not once. Not a bad month. 7 years. My mom knew the entire time, and she never once bought the medicated shampoo. She said it was too expensive, and it never worked anyway. A single box cost about $12. She spent more than that on her own hair products every month. Instead of treating it properly, she sat me down at the kitchen table and combed through my hair with a fine-tooth comb for hours, pulling out each louse individually with her fingers. My hair went past my shoulders, and she refused to cut it because she said short hair would make me look boyish. She kept my hair long and used it as an excuse for why the process took so long and never fully worked. She graduated from the comb to shower caps full of cheap conditioner. She would coat my entire scalp in conditioner, pull a shower cap over my head, and tell me I had to wear it for at least 2 hours. I sat in the living room with a plastic cap stuck to my head, unable to go anywhere because she said I was in quarantine. Within a month, they were always back. One method she came up with was making me sit at the kitchen table, hunched over a white piece of paper, and scratch my scalp so the bugs and nits would fall onto the paper. Then she told me to circle each one with a pencil. I was 10 years old circling insects on a piece of paper that had fallen out of my own head while she stood behind me, watching like it was a school project. Then she found out from someone that cooking spray killed lice. She took a can of Pam and sprayed it directly onto my scalp. Every single bite on my head caught fire at the same time. The oil seeped into open wounds from weeks of scratching and burned so badly I grabbed the edge of the table with both hands and squeezed until my knuckles went white. She told me to hold still and keep letting it sit. She sprayed cooking oil on her child's bleeding scalp and told her to be patient. One night the family went to a drive-in theater and she made me go out wearing the shower cap. She pulled a beanie over it and turned me toward the mirror to show me it didn't look that bad. The beanie sat so high and wide on my head that I looked like I had no hair at all underneath. I started crying because I didn't want to go out looking like that. I was 11 years old, and every girl I knew got to feel normal when they left the house, and I couldn't even go to a movie without a plastic bag on my head. Both my parents stood there and laughed at me while I cried. They laughed like an 11-year-old girl not wanting to look strange in public was comedy. By the time I was 15, the lice were as big as my fingernails. They crawled across my eyebrows. I had visible marks around my entire hairline from years of biting and scratching. It was so bad that I stopped looking in mirrors because I didn't want to see what was living on me. And at 15, the reason my mom finally couldn't ignore it anymore wasn't because she saw how much I was suffering. It was because she had a new boyfriend, and she was terrified he would find out her daughter had lice. She didn't fix it for me. She panicked about it for herself. My dad had been separated from her for a while by then. He knew about the lice, but he never stepped in because she told him it was her job, and he was afraid of her. When he finally came to the house and saw how bad it had gotten, he took me to a drugstore, bought the medicated shampoo, and sat with me while I treated my hair properly for the first time in 7 years. $12. That's what it cost. I think she kept the lice going on purpose, not to hurt me, but to control me. As long as I had lice, I couldn't sleep over at friends' houses. I couldn't go to camp. I couldn't stay anywhere overnight without risking someone finding out. The lice gave her a permanent reason to keep me home, and she made sure it never went away. Years later, when I was 23, my mom got shingles. Bad. The rash spread across her back and up her neck. She said it felt like her skin was on fire all the time. She called and said her boyfriend had left 2 months earlier. She was alone in the house and couldn't take care of herself, and she needed me to come stay for a few weeks to help with meals and errands and drive her to doctor's appointments. I asked her if she had gone to the doctor yet. She said the prescription cream was $60, and she didn't want to spend that much on something she wasn't sure would work. She said she had been using aloe vera from a bottle in the bathroom and it wasn't helping, but she wanted to give it more time. I listened to her describe the burning on her skin, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sorry for her. I called Harrison and told him what Saoirse wanted. He got quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "You don't owe her anything, but if you go for yourself, not for her." Then he said, "There's something I never told you. When I came to the house that day, the day I finally took you to the drugstore, I went into the bathroom to grab a towel for your hair. Behind the stack of towels in the closet, way in the back, there were 3 boxes of the medicated shampoo, unopened, still in the plastic wrap. I couldn't say anything. 3 boxes. She had them. She had the shampoo the whole time." The story I had been telling myself for years, the one where my mom was just cheap and stubborn and believed in her home remedies too much, that story was wrong. She didn't skip the treatment because she couldn't afford it. She bought it. She looked at it sitting on that shelf and she chose not to use it on me. He said, "I asked her about them. She told me they were for emergencies." I said the word out loud. Emergencies. 7 years of lice crawling across my face was not an emergency. My scalp cracking open from scratching was not an emergency. Me sobbing at 11 with a plastic bag on my head was not an emergency. But Zhao finding out, that was the emergency. That was when the boxes finally came off the shelf. Not for me, for her. I told Harrison I was going. He said, "Be careful. She knows how to make you feel like the bad guy." I went to my closet and reached into the box on the top shelf where I keep things from when I was a kid. At the bottom, wrapped in a paper towel, the fine-tooth comb, the one she used on me hundreds of times at that kitchen table. I don't know why I kept it. I just knew I wanted it with me. I put it in my bag and zipped it shut. The drive to Saoirse's house took 40 minutes. Same cracked driveway, same crooked porch railing. She opened the door and she looked small. She pulled me into a hug. "Thank God you came," she said. "I knew you would. You were always the good one." I felt my whole body go stiff. My arms came up halfway and just hovered there. I didn't pull away. I let her hold on until she was done. The house smelled like the lavender candles she always burned. Same couch, same kitchen table, same hallway leading to the bathroom where 3 boxes of shampoo once sat behind a stack of towels. For the first 2 hours, I fell right back into it. She asked for tea and I was already filling the kettle before the sentence was finished. She said she hadn't eaten much and I heated up soup. I changed the bandages on her back while she winced and sucked air through her teeth. I could feel myself shrinking back into the version of me that lived in this house, the one who didn't ask questions, the one who just helped. And then, sitting at the kitchen table where I used to scratch bugs onto paper, she looked up at me and said, "Can you check the bathroom? I think there's some aloe left. The prescription is too expensive and I'm not sure it even works. I stopped moving. My hand was on the counter and I just froze there. Too expensive. Not sure it even works. The exact same sentence in the exact same voice at the exact same table. Except back then, it was a $12 box of medicated shampoo and a little girl with a bleeding scalp. Now it was a $60 cream and a grown woman who wanted me to rub aloe on her back instead. Something clicked in my chest like a lock turning. I wasn't falling back in. I was wide awake. I put the aloe back on the shelf and walked to the kitchen. I sat down across from her and I asked her, no buildup, why didn't you ever just buy the shampoo? Her face tightened. The skin around her mouth pulled in and her eyes got harder. She set her tea down and said, we've been over this. It was expensive and it didn't work. I said, $12, Mom. You spent more than that on conditioner for the shower caps. She shifted in her chair and her whole tone changed. It went from flat and dismissive to something softer. Something supposed to sound hurt. I did everything I could. I spent hours combing your hair. Hours. Do you know how many mothers would have just shaved your head? I kept your hair beautiful. There it was. The version of the story where she was the hero. I felt the old pull in my chest. The guilt. But I pushed through. I said, you kept my hair long because it made the lice harder to treat. That wasn't for me. That was for you. Her eyes narrowed. You're twisting things. You always twist things. I was a single mother doing my best. Single mother, doing my best. Two phrases that had shut me down 100 times growing up. But this time I had something she didn't know I had. I said, then why were there 3 boxes of medicated shampoo behind the towels in the bathroom? Saoirse went completely still. Not the kind of still where someone is thinking about what to say next. The kind of still where the ground drops out from under someone and they haven't figured out yet if they're falling. Her mouth opened slightly. Nothing came out. The only sound in the kitchen was the hum of the fridge. Then she recovered. Your father told you that? He was never around. He doesn't know what he saw. I said, he saw boxes with your name on the receipt. That one landed. I could see it land. Her shoulders pulled back and her nostrils flared, and for just a second, she looked like she was going to say something honest. Instead, she pushed herself up to standing, wincing as the shingles pulled at her skin. I'm not doing this. I'm sick. I called you here because I need help, and you're attacking me. She walked out of the kitchen, one hand on the wall for balance. I heard the couch creak as she sat down. I didn't follow her. Every time she walked away from a conversation when I was a kid, I followed. Every time she went quiet, I apologized. Not this time. I reached down to my bag and pulled out the fine-tooth comb. It was off-white now, kind of yellowish from age. One of the teeth near the end slightly bent from years of being dragged through infested hair. I set it on the table, right in the middle. I didn't call out to her. I just let it sit there. She came back almost an hour later. She looked at the comb first. The skin around her eyes went tight and her mouth opened just a little bit. She knew what it was. She remembered. She sat down slowly. Where did you get that? I said, I kept it. I've had it since I was 8. I said it like I was telling her what I had for lunch. No anger, no drama, just a fact. She blinked at me, then looked back at the comb. Her bottom lip tightened the way it always did right before she went on the attack. You kept a comb from when you were a child? That's not normal. That's not healthy. She was flipping it. The comb was the problem, not what the comb had been used for. I kept a comb. I was the weird one. I didn't take the bait. I let it sit between us. She shifted forward and her energy changed. The sharpness left her face and something softer took its place. Something wet and broken. Her voice cracked. I have shingles. My skin is literally falling apart. I called the one person I thought would help me. And instead, you brought a comb to my kitchen table to make me feel like a bad mother. The tears came. They pooled along her lower lashes, and one of them slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She never wiped them away. She let them sit on her face where I could see them because she knew what they did to me. She reached across the table and put her hand on my wrist. Her fingers were warm and her grip was gentle, and I hated how familiar it felt. Your father left us. He disappeared and I raised you alone. Every night I sat at this table and combed your hair because I didn't have help. I didn't have money. I didn't have anyone. Her thumb pressed against my pulse. I was trying. Can't you see that I was trying? And I almost broke. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. The tears looked real. The pain in her voice sounded real. The shingles on her back were real. For a second, I thought maybe I was being cruel. Maybe I had driven 40 minutes with a childhood comb in my bag to torture a sick woman, and that made me worse than her. I felt my hand move toward the comb. I was going to pick it up. I was going to put it back in my bag and zip it shut and go back to being the version of me that kept the peace. She saw my hand move and something changed in her face. The tears were still there, but behind them was something that looked a lot like winning. She softened her voice and said, that's my girl. Let's just have a nice visit. I missed you. That's my girl. The same words she used when I stopped crying about the shower cap. The same words she used when I sat still for the cooking spray. That's my girl meant I win. My fingers were touching the comb. And then she said one more thing, like an afterthought. She tilted her head slightly and said, besides, the lice weren't that bad. You were always so dramatic about it. My hand stopped. Not that bad. 7 years. Cooking spray on open wounds. Sitting at the same table at 10 circling bugs on paper. Standing in front of a mirror at 11 wearing a shower cap under a beanie. 3 boxes of medicated shampoo sitting unopened behind a stack of towels. I took my hand off the comb and slid it back to the center of the table, right where she had to look at it. I looked at her and I said, tell me about the cooking spray, Mom. Tell me how that wasn't that bad. She remembered. I could see her remember. She had spent 15 years convincing herself it didn't count. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter behind her. She glanced at the screen and something happened to her face that I can only describe as a costume change. Every hard line disappeared. She picked up the phone and her voice came out like honey. Hi, honey. No, I'm fine. My daughter's here helping me. She looked right at me while she said it, and she smiled. I could hear Zhao's voice on the other end, asking if she needed anything, if she was eating, if the pain was better. Normal boyfriend questions. She answered in that sweet, easy voice. No, she's got everything under control. She's such a good girl. Good girl. She said it the way you'd talk about a dog that finally learned to sit. Then she said, she dropped everything to come take care of me. I raised her right. I raised her right. She said that to him while the comb was still sitting on the table between us. She said that while the conversation about cooking smoking spray was still hanging in the air like smoke, and I understood something. Me being here was the whole point. Not because she needed help with shingles, not because she needed someone to heat up soup or change her bandages. She needed me here so she could point at me and say, look at my daughter. Look how she came running when I called. That proves I was a good mother. I had come here to be her mirror. She was using me as her trophy. When she hung up, her face was different, confident. Zhao is coming over tomorrow to check on me. She glanced at the comb and made a small gesture toward it. So whatever this is, we're done with it. I don't want him seeing you act like this. I said, act like what? She looked me straight in the face and said, like someone who doesn't love her mother. If I stayed, she'd put on the show of her life. Loving girlfriend, grateful mother, happy home. Anything I said would look like a grown woman picking a fight with her sick mother in front of her boyfriend. If I left, she'd call Zhao the second my car pulled out and cry that I abandoned her. She'd be the victim either way. She always controlled the story. She had been controlling it since I was 8 years old, sitting at this table with bugs falling out of my head. I made a decision. I wasn't leaving, and I wasn't performing. I put both hands on the table and I said, good, let Zhao come. I'd love to talk to him. The confidence on her face cracked. What is that supposed to mean? I said, it means I have a lot of stories about my childhood that I've never told anyone outside this family. Saoirse stared at me. Her fingers tightened against each other on the table. For the first time all night, she didn't have a comeback. The room went quiet. And this time, I wasn't the one who was scared of the silence. She didn't sleep that night. I could hear her pacing in her bedroom at 2 in the morning. The floorboards creaking in that rhythm you only get when someone is trapped in their own head. She was scared, not of the shingles. She was scared of Zhao hearing the truth from someone who lived it. I sat on the guest bed with the comb in my hands and thought about every single night I spent as a kid with a plastic bag on my head, scratching until I bled, while she told me to be patient. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Saoirse was already in the kitchen, dressed in a real shirt, her hair brushed and pinned back. The kitchen table had been wiped clean, 2 mugs sitting on the counter like a peace offering, and the comb was gone. I said, where's the comb? She didn't look up from the coffee. I threw it away. It was old and disgusting. She said it the same way you'd say you threw out a napkin. I said, that's convenient. She put both hands on the counter behind her. Zhao will be here in an hour. I need you to be normal. Please, just be my daughter. I looked at her standing there in her nice shirt with her brushed hair and her clean table and her thrown away evidence, and I said, I've always been your daughter. That was the problem. She picked up one of the coffee mugs and carried it to the living room without offering me the other one. Zhao arrived 50 minutes later. He pulled Saoirse into a careful hug, keeping his arms high so he wouldn't press the rash. He turned to me and smiled. Your mom talks about you all the time. She says you're the reason she keeps going. I smiled back. I didn't say anything. We moved into the living room. Saoirse positioned herself between us, her hand on Zhao's knee. Loving girlfriend, grateful mother, happy home. Zhao asked how she was doing with treatment. Saoirse waved her hand. I'm managing. The cream is expensive, but I'll figure it out. I said, how expensive? Her head turned toward me slowly. The smile stayed, but her eyes went hard. $60, right? That's what you told me on the phone. Zhao sat up straighter. $60? I can pick that up for you this afternoon. Saoirse put her hand on his arm. No, it's fine. I don't want to be a burden. I looked at Zhao and said, she's been using aloe vera from the bathroom instead. Zhao frowned. He turned to Saoirse. Babe, that's not going to work. You need the real stuff. Saoirse let out a short laugh. See? Everyone thinks they know better than me. I kept my voice quiet, not angry, not dramatic, just quiet. I looked at Zhao and said, can I ask you something? Did my mom ever tell you I had lice growing up? The room went silent. I watched the color leave my mother's face. Zhao looked between us. She mentioned it once, said you had it for a little while when you were young, and she treated it. I nodded. A little while. How long did she say? I don't know. A few weeks maybe? I let that sit. 7 years. Zhao's face changed. It was like watching someone do math in their head and come up with a number that didn't match what they'd been told. He turned to Saoirse. She was already standing up, wincing as the shingles pulled. She's exaggerating. She always does this. She holds onto things and blows them out of proportion. I stayed seated. The medicated shampoo cost $12. She never bought it. She sprayed cooking oil on my scalp instead. She made me sit with a plastic bag on my head for hours. She had boxes of the real treatment hidden in the bathroom and she never used them. I turned my eyes from Zhao to Saoirse. You kept me sick, so I couldn't leave the house. So I couldn't go to sleepovers. So I couldn't go to camp. So I had to stay with you. Zhao said, is that true? His voice was quiet, not angry, but heavy. Saoirse's chin started to tremble. Her whole face crumbled from the outside in. You don't understand. I was alone. Her father left. She was all I had. The tears came fast and real. You were all I had. Everything I did was because I couldn't lose you. I stood up. My legs were shaking. My hands were shaking. But my voice came out steady. I said, you didn't lose me, Mom. You trapped me. There's a difference. She flinched. Actually flinched, like I'd raised a hand at her. I kept going. And right now, you're sitting here with shingles, refusing to buy your own medicine, hoping I'll rub aloe on your back the same way you rubbed conditioner on my head. And the only reason you called me is because Zhao left for 2 months and you were alone again. Saoirse opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I picked up my bag and walked to the front door. I stopped with my hand on the handle and turned around one more time. She was still standing in the same spot, her arms at her sides. Zhao still sitting in his chair looking at the floor. I said, the prescription is $60, Mom. Go buy it. You know where the drugstore is. Harrison showed me. I opened the door and walked out. I drove to Harrison's. He opened his door before I knocked. I sat at his kitchen table. He didn't ask anything. Neither of us said a word for a long time.